When God places his hand on your life, no weapon formed against you will prosper. Not because the weapons won't be formed, but because they can't win. When a woman is truly under the shelter of the Most High, she becomes a fortress of faith in the middle of a battlefield. Evil can circle, darkness can whisper, enemies can plot, but heaven has already declared, not this one. There are signs, clear signs, that God himself is guarding you, covering you, and shielding you from every plot meant to destroy you. Today, let's uncover 8 signs a woman is protected by God from evil people, so you can walk in boldness knowing who has your back. When you are under divine protection, there's a sensitivity in your spirit that others may not understand. You can walk into a room full of smiles and handshakes, but something inside of you detects a shadow behind the light. You don't have to see the knife to know someone's hand is reaching for it. You don't have to read the plot to know there's one being written. That inner whisper isn't paranoia, it's preparation. It's God's way of making sure you never step blindly into a trap. Before the enemy can move, the Spirit already moves in you, giving you a still small voice that says, watch this. Step back. Wait. See, it's like a spiritual early warning system. The whisper comes before the wound, not after. You might feel uneasy when there's no reason, restless when everyone else is at peace, or cautious when they say, there's nothing to worry about. But heaven knows what hell is planning, and it sends you the memo before the meeting even starts. That's why some people can't understand your sudden change of mind, your canceled plans, or your quiet distance. You don't need to explain yourself. Obedience is its own explanation. Sometimes the whisper is not in words, but in a tightening in your chest, a heaviness in your spirit, or an unshakable check in your heart. You can be on the phone, hearing someone's voice, and suddenly, you know they aren't being honest. You can be offered an opportunity that looks perfect on paper, but you can feel the ink dripping with deception. The whisper may be quiet, but its truth thunders through your soul. And here's the thing. When you live under divine covering, you don't have to know why the whisper came to trust it. The whisper is enough. God isn't obligated to hand you the full report of the enemy's plans. He just gives you the key to stay out of reach. That key might be a delay, a redirection, or a complete no. The whisper is his way of keeping you ahead of what's behind you. The enemy hopes you'll ignore that voice. He hopes you'll reason your way past it, thinking, I'm overreacting. Or maybe I'm just being too sensitive. But protection often looks like inconvenience before it looks like deliverance. That closed door that frustrated you could have been the door that swallowed you. That relationship you let go of could have been the rope that tied you. And that job you didn't get could have been the chain that held you. The whisper is mercy in motion. It moves you before harm can touch you. It repositions you before danger can see you. And it trains you to trust what you cannot trace. People who are protected learn to live not just by what they see, but by what they sense. They move in rhythm with the unseen hand that has already walked through the path ahead of them. Sometimes the whisper will come to you when you are about to speak. You'll feel a sudden urge to hold your tongue. You may not know that your words were about to be twisted, or that your honesty was about to be used against you. But the whisper says, don't say it. You obey, and later you realize the snare you just avoided. Other times, The whisper comes when you're about to step into a deal, an agreement, or a connection. On the surface, it glitters, but the whisper tells you it's not gold, it's bait. If you follow the whisper, you'll walk away from what looks good but isn't God. And that is the essence of protection, being guided away from danger disguised as blessing. This whisper is not random. It's a sign you are covered. You are not wandering aimlessly in life. You are being navigated by one who knows every pitfall before you ever arrive. Every time you listen, you reinforce the shield around you. Every time you obey, you step further into the safety of his will. And when you live like that, you start to see the pattern. The whisper is always on time. The warning always comes before the wound. You may never fully know what you were spared from, but you will always know who spared you. That's why you can walk in peace, even in a world filled with traps, because you know there's a voice that speaks to you before the blade is ever drawn. There comes a point when you stop waiting for people to hand you the explanations they'll never give. You stop sitting in the courtroom of someone else's silence, hoping for a verdict that will make sense of their betrayal, abandonment, or change of heart. She has learned that closure is often just a polite word for control, the need to hear something from them, so you can feel justified in your leaving. But the truth is, some doors are meant to be shut without hearing what's on the other side. She knows that peace doesn't come from their confession. It comes from her decision to stop knocking. Walking away without closure doesn't mean she didn't care. It means she cared enough for herself to stop bleeding where there's no bandage. She realized that waiting for an apology from someone who never valued her enough to offer it is a slow form of self-destruction. So instead, she takes her questions, her hurt, and her confusion to God, the only one who can answer in ways that heal instead of reopen wounds. People may call it cold, but it's actually wisdom disguised as quiet strength. She understands that closure is often an illusion. Even if the words came, they wouldn't undo the actions. Even if the truth was spoken, it wouldn't make the betrayal disappear. What would she do with the information anyway? Replay it in her mind? Use it as fuel for bitterness. She refuses to let her future be held hostage by what she'll never hear. Instead, she lays the unanswered questions at the feet of the one who knows the whole story. The ability to walk away without closure is a sign of deep healing. It's not the absence of pain, it's the presence of self-respect. It's knowing that someone's inability to value her does not reduce her value. It's refusing to let unanswered texts or unfinished conversations define her worth. She doesn't need to hear. Why? When she already knows. She is. There's freedom in refusing to chase after people who have already decided to walk in another direction. She understands that if someone wanted to stay, they would have stayed. If they wanted to explain, they would have explained. Silence is its own explanation. Absence is its own closure. Instead of running in circles around their indifference, she walks a straight path toward her own peace. Walking away without closure means she no longer makes her healing dependent on someone else's honesty. She no longer places the key to her recovery in someone else's pocket. She no longer lets her future wait in the waiting room of someone else's conscience. She reclaims her power by deciding that their silence will not be the loudest voice in her life. Some days, the decision is harder than others. The mind still wonders, still drifts to the what ifs and whys, but every time those thoughts come, she reminds herself that the answers she's looking for won't change the ending. They'll only keep her stuck in the chapter she's already outgrown. She refuses to reread a book that God has already closed. She knows that the same God who removed them from her life also removed the need for their explanation. He saw what she didn't see. He heard what she didn't hear. He knew what she couldn't know. And if he decided she could move forward without their words, then she trusts that his plan didn't require their permission. She walks away quietly, not out of weakness, but out of strength. It takes more courage to leave without closure than it does to keep begging for it. It's the kind of courage that says, I don't need you to release me, I release myself. It's the kind of courage that knows peace is too expensive to rent out to the wrong tenants. And so she keeps moving, not because she has all the answers, but because she refuses to let the lack of them keep her standing still. She chooses to believe that everything she didn't hear was simply God's way of protecting her from hearing something that would have hurt her more. She has learned that not everyone who walks into her life is meant to stay, and not every friendly face is a safe place. But when she looks around and sees the people who truly stand beside her, she realizes they are not there by accident. These are God-appointed relationships, connections forged not out of convenience or circumstance, but out of divine alignment. They are the ones who speak life into her when the world tries to drain her. They are the ones who see her worth, even when she's struggling to see it herself. She knows these relationships are more than friendships. They are part of her spiritual protection. The people God sends don't just applaud her victories. They help her fight through the battles. They pray with her, not just for her. They show up when the crowd disappears. They carry her burdens without broadcasting them to others. And because she knows they are placed in her life by God, she treats them like the treasure they are. These are not people who flatter her to gain favor. They are people who challenge her to grow into the fullness of her calling. God-appointed relationships are different because they are rooted in truth, not in convenience. They don't disappear when storms hit. In fact, they often run toward her when others run away. These are the people who remind her of who she is when the lies of the enemy try to cloud her identity. They don't feed her fears, they feed her faith. They see her as God sees her, and they speak to her potential, even when her present feels heavy. When she's tempted to settle for less, these God-sent voices rise up to remind her of the standard heaven has for her life. They won't let her shrink just to fit into someone else's comfort zone. They won't let her compromise what God has called her to carry. And because she knows their presence is a divine appointment, she listens to their counsel, even when it's not easy to hear. Being surrounded by God-appointed relationships also means that the wrong people are kept out. God doesn't just add, He subtracts. She's learned that losing some people was necessary for her to make space for the right ones. Sometimes the absence of certain voices is just as much of a blessing as the presence of others. The ones God removes could never have supported the weight of her calling, but the ones He sends are built to help her carry it. These relationships don't require her to perform to be accepted. She can be honest about her struggles without fearing judgment. She can rest without fearing abandonment. She can celebrate without fearing jealousy. There is a deep safety that comes from knowing the people around her are not threatened by her growth, nor are they plotting against her peace. She realizes that God-appointed relationships are often answers to prayers she didn't even know how to pray. Sometimes He sends someone in a season where she feels isolated, and suddenly she finds herself walking with a person whose faith strengthens hers. Sometimes He brings someone into her life who has already walked through the fire she's facing so they can help guide her through without getting burned. She values these relationships not for what they can give her materially, but for the spiritual covering they provide. These are people who will stand in the gap for her when she's too wary to stand for herself. They will intercede when she's under attack. They will speak scripture when she's drowning in lies. She knows these people are her shield just as much as her friends. Even when disagreements happen, and they will, she knows these relationships are built on something unshakable. God's hand is on them. Offense doesn't have the power to destroy what He has established. Misunderstandings become opportunities for grace instead of reasons for distance. She knows that keeping these bonds strong is part of protecting the gift God has placed around her. Every time she looks around and sees the ones who remain, she feels the weight of that divine protection. She knows that as long as she walks in obedience, God will continue to surround her with people who push her closer to Him and further from harm. And in that circle, she walks with confidence, knowing she is never truly alone. Her peace is not something that can be negotiated or taken lightly because it is not rooted in circumstances. It is rooted in God. She has been through seasons where chaos tried to swallow her, where betrayal tried to break her, and where loss tried to crush her spirit. But in each of those moments, she learned that peace isn't found in the absence of trouble. It's found in the presence of the one who holds her life together. The kind of peace she carries is supernatural, anchored in promises that cannot be shaken by storms. She has learned to guard her heart like a fortress, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. She understands that the enemy doesn't always attack with visible weapons. Sometimes he comes for her through distraction, discouragement, or deception. But she has trained her spirit to recognize the subtle ways he tries to creep in and disturb her inner calm. Instead of reacting impulsively, she prays. Instead of lashing out, she listens for God's voice. Her peace is protected because she refuses to give power to anything or anyone that is not sent by God. People may misunderstand her quiet strength. They may assume that her calm means she is unaware of what's happening, but the truth is she sees more than she speaks. She chooses her battles carefully, knowing that not everything requires her response. Her peace is too valuable to be spent on arguments that lead nowhere or on people committed to misunderstanding her. She has learned that silence can be a form of strength and that sometimes the best answer is to simply not engage. Her peace remains because she has surrendered control to God. She no longer tries to manipulate outcomes or force people to see her worth. She trusts that what is meant for her will come in God's timing, and what is not meant for her will leave, no matter how tightly she tries to hold it. This surrender frees her from the anxiety that once consumed her. When her heart starts to feel heavy, she takes it to prayer instead of letting it spiral into worry. Her peace is sustained by boundaries that are not up for debate. She has learned that protecting her spirit sometimes means saying no to things that look good but aren't God. She does not apologize for creating space between herself and environments that drain her. She has seen what happens when she lets her guard down for the wrong reasons, and she refuses to let history repeat itself. Boundaries, to her, are not walls. They are gates that open only for what nourishes her soul. She knows her peace is a reflection of her faith. When others panic, she chooses to believe. When others speak fear, she speaks scripture. Her trust in God keeps her from being tossed around by every problem that arises. Even when situations don't make sense, she clings to the truth that He is working all things for her good. This confidence silences the voices that try to plant doubt in her mind, because she knows the one who promised her peace is faithful to keep it. Her peace can't be stolen because she no longer seeks validation in unstable places. She does not measure her worth by the approval of people or the success of a single moment. Her identity is not fragile. It is cemented in who God says she is. This makes her unshakable because no loss, no rumor, no rejection has the authority to undo what God has already declared over her life. She protects her peace by being intentional about what she allows in her spirit. She is mindful of the conversation she entertains, the content she consumes, and the energy she absorbs from those around her. She knows that peace is not just kept through prayer. It is kept through discipline. The more she aligns her daily habits with God's truth, the more her heart stays steady in a world that thrives on chaos. Even in moments when emotions rise and pressure mounts, she leans on the peace of God like a shield. She has experienced too much to let a temporary storm convince her that the sun will not shine again. She reminds herself that peace is not the absence of noise, but the presence of clarity. And she holds on to that clarity even when everything else is uncertain. She has become a living testimony that peace is a gift that cannot be stolen unless it is surrendered. And she has decided that she will not give it up. Not for comfort, not for approval, not for anything that costs her more than it gives. Her peace is her strength, and she will continue to walk in it no matter what tries to come against her. She has come to understand that when a door closes, it is not always a punishment. It is often divine protection. There were times when she wept over opportunities she thought she needed, relationships she thought would last, and paths she thought were meant for her. But with time, God revealed that those very doors would have led her into situations that would drain her, derail her, or destroy her peace. What she once saw as rejection was actually God placing a shield between her and what would have harmed her future. She has learned to shift her perspective. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" she now asks, "What is God saving me from?" This simple change in thinking has given her a new strength. Closed doors no longer make her feel small or unwanted. They remind her that her life is under divine management. Every no she receives is not a denial of her worth, but a redirection towards something better than she could imagine. In the past, she tried to force doors open. She begged people to stay. She pursued opportunities that clearly weren't aligned with God's will. And she thought persistence meant never giving up on what she wanted. But she learned that when she forces something, she becomes responsible for sustaining it, and that is a burden she no longer wants to carry. Now, she rests in the truth that what God opens, no one can shut, and what He shuts, no one can open. Her heart is no longer crushed by the sound of a closing door. Instead, she finds comfort in it. She sees it as God saying, I see what you don't see. I know what you don't know. Trust me. This trust allows her to move forward without resentment or regret. She no longer wastes energy knocking on doors that have been sealed by God's hand. She uses that energy to prepare for the ones He is about to open. She has also realized that closed doors protect her from settling. Sometimes God closes a door not because the thing is bad, but because it is less than what He has planned for her. She knows the danger of accepting, almost, blessings, things that look close to her dream but are not the fullness of it. Now she refuses to compromise her destiny just to have something now. She would rather wait for God's perfect timing than accept a watered down version of what He promised. Closed doors have taught her patience. They have shown her that life is not a race to see who can achieve the fastest, but a journey of alignment. When a door doesn't open right away, she sees it as a signal that God is still arranging the details behind the scenes. This waiting period has become her training ground, shaping her character so she is ready when the right opportunity arrives. She has learned to read the peace in her spirit as a guide. Even if something looks good on the surface, if her spirit feels unsettled, she takes that as a sign it is not for her. Many times, that internal nudge has kept her from stepping into situations that would have looked like a blessing, but turned into a burden. Her discernment has sharpened because she has allowed God to use closed doors as lessons rather than wounds. Every closed door has made her more grateful for the ones that eventually opened. When she walks through a new opportunity now, she does so with a deeper sense of appreciation, knowing the cost of patience and trust. She doesn't take blessings lightly anymore. She sees them as evidence that God's plan is unfolding exactly as it should. She knows that people may not always understand her calm when things don't go her way. They may think she isn't ambitious enough or that she doesn't care. But the truth is, she cares deeply. She just refuses to panic when God changes the plan. She has seen too much of His faithfulness to believe that a closed door means the end of her story. She moves forward with confidence, not because she knows every detail of the path ahead, but because she knows the one who holds the keys. And when He closes a door, she takes it as a divine act of love, trusting that the next one will open at the exact time it is meant to, leading her exactly where she is meant to be. Here's a full motivational speech in the tone and style you want without mentioning His name, with a strong introduction, clear key points, and a powerful closing introduction when God places His hand on your life. No weapon formed against you will prosper, not because the weapons won't be formed, but because they can't win. When a woman is truly under the shelter of the Most High, she becomes a fortress of faith in the middle of a battlefield. Evil can circle, darkness can whisper, enemies can plot, but heaven has already declared, not this one. There are signs, clear signs that God Himself is guarding you, covering you, and shielding you from every plot meant to destroy you. Today, let's uncover 8 signs a woman is protected by God from evil people, so you can walk in boldness knowing who has your back. T2, when he hears the whisper before the wound. A protected woman has a spiritual radar. She senses danger before it strikes. It's not paranoia, it's discernment. God gives her insight, dreams, inner nudges, and unshakable warnings to keep her out of traps before the wrong person can even finish weaving their web. She's already stepping away, because heaven has tuned her ear to his voice. Two, she walks away without needing closure. Evil thrives on trying to keep you tangled in confusion, waiting for explanations. But a protected woman doesn't wait for clarity from darkness. She obeys the light she's been given. When God says go, she doesn't hesitate. Her protection is in her obedience, and her obedience shuts the door before evil can follow. Professed history. She's surrounded by God, appointed relationships. Protection isn't always about keeping the wrong people out. It's also about placing the right people in. A woman under God's covering finds herself connected to people who pray for her, speak life over her, and stand with her when storms come. Those relationships are divine armor, making it harder for evil to isolate and attack her. 2T, Hafi saw her peace can't be stolen. Evil people feed on fear and chaos, but a protected woman carries an unshakable peace. Even in heated situations, her calm is her weapon. She knows who holds her life, so she doesn't give anxiety a seat at her table. This peace becomes a shield, repelling the fiery darts of manipulation and intimidation. 5v5 closed doors become her protection, not her rejection. When evil plans to enter, God often answers with a slammed door. A protected woman understands that no is often God's greatest defense. She doesn't try to force open what God has shut, because she knows every closed opportunity is a hidden layer of protection from something meant to harm her. Fee66, she carries an authority she didn't ask for. A woman under divine covering walks with an authority that intimidates darkness. Evil people may not even understand why they can't get to her, but in the spiritual realm, her presence says, she's marked. Her authority comes from alignment with God's word, and it makes the enemy keep his distance. 5-7, she's covered even when she's unaware. Some of God's protection is visible, but most of it is unseen. There are battles fought on her behalf she will never know about. Attacks stopped before they reached her. Lies exposed before they spread. The enemy's plans canceled in silence. She's protected because heaven fights for her even when she's sleeping. Ifesi, her purpose is untouchably. Evil people can try to distract, delay, or discourage, but they cannot destroy the assignment God has placed on her life. Every setback becomes a setup. Every betrayal becomes a breakthrough. She is unshakable because she knows the one who called her will complete what he started. First, closing words, this: when God protects you, it's not just about keeping you safe, it's about positioning you for purpose. A woman under divine covering is not just surviving, she's advancing. Every attack becomes proof of her value in the kingdom. Every storm becomes a stage for God's power. And when the enemy realizes heaven has built a wall around you, he won't waste time trying to climb it, because he knows what you already know. You are untouchable in the hands of the Almighty. If you want, I can also create a SEO-friendly description, timestamps, keywords, hashtags, and tags for this speech so it's ready for YouTube. That would make it fully optimized for reach and engagement.